the reaction that business owners have when they truly understand what their culture is versus what they think it is, they're always shocked. Apple and Google, they also have it right. Apple has an unbelievable culture of fanatic fans all over the planet. Good morning, everybody. I'm very excited today to have Bill Mince with me. Welcome, Bill. Thanks for joining the show.
Thank you.
Great to have you. So Bill is currently an interim CEO who works with organizations around the country that are looking for deep expertise in M&A, growth, turnaround. So today we're going to talk to Bill and we're going to find out the secret sauce of an interim CEO. So tell us how you ended up becoming an interim CEO.
Well, I spent 10 years with a public medical device company doing acquisitions, and we did 15 acquisitions in 8 years.
Wow. I
was the officer on deck every day that we closed the deal. So I was there doing all of the post-acquisition integration.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time, so it was like a new job every 6 months.
Right.
And so when I finished that gig in 2012, I took a little time off and wrote a little book on management. I decided that I would explore the interim executive because I had this experience of parachuting into a new situation and addressing what needed to be done to get the company profitable.
That's awesome. So what industries or vertical markets do you feel most comfortable serving?
Well, I did most of that in the medical device business, but I've done acquisitions in the digital media space as well. And I also have a deep manufacturing expertise, having offshored a number of facilities. I built a factory in Tijuana, Mexico. So I've got a sort of a broad range of manufacturing as well as building businesses.
Awesome. So I'm a culture guy. I'm big on corporate culture. I'm big on understanding people, the impact of people. So when an interim CEO comes in, it's typically for a reason, and we'll talk about some of that soon. What happens to the culture of the company? How does the culture impact what you do as an interim CEO?
Yeah, that's probably the most key thing when you're coming into the organization, because you're often replacing somebody who's either left under circumstances where the company wasn't doing what it needed to achieve, and sometimes it's an issue with the staff. Sometimes the company just isn't going in the correct direction, or it needs a change in culture. So the first thing I want to do is understand what motivates people, what the key issues are, and help people understand the tie between where the corporation needs to go and how they fit into that, and help them understand that they're going to help make the decisions. They're going to help drive this. I'm very big on empowering people within the organization if they're willing to step up and make the hard decisions that need to be made to correct the situation.
Great. So you want the people to participate in the process of change.
Oh, you bet. That is absolutely, my success has always been listening to the people, because most of the solutions are already in the business.
Right.
And oftentimes the leader's ego gets in the way and he or she doesn't listen to the people in the organization.
Got it. So who makes the decision to bring you in? So as an interim exec, who's making the call to bring you in?
If I come in as a COO, then often it's the CEO who's making the decision. If it's come in at a CEO level, then it's the board is usually making that decision. Either pressure from the shareholders or the financial results aren't exactly what they want them to be.
Okay. So talk a little bit about how many have you done? How many turnarounds and how many projects?
So I've been involved in 25 acquisitions. I've had 2 interim CEO positions. Most of those were short with startups, where I was more focused on helping them get the strategy set. I did one in a public company where I came in as president and COO for another small company. So almost 30 times I've sort of parachuted into a situation that needed help.
So tell us about the best one you've ever done in terms of results, where you've produced the greatest results for that particular organization. Talk about that for a minute if you can.
Yeah, this was a software team in New York that was serving the departments of health, and they were providing something to track data for inherited diseases for the departments of health. And they were way off base. We bought them. They were doing about $2.5 million in revenue. And it took about 15 months to redirect them, get this underlying database rewritten. They're now doing about $12 million a year, and they're just ticking right along. And it took forcing some changes in the personnel, but the general manager, who had been the lead technical guy, I basically gave him a choice to take the technical path or the managerial path. knowing that if he took the managerial path and failed, there was no crossing back over.
Right.
So I sent him to Dale Carnegie, and I helped coach him through that. So for me, that's one of my proudest situations, where I took an existing general manager who was struggling and helped coach him to success. And he's now running, a business at sixfold what it was running when we got involved.
That's awesome. So now he's got a business that's thriving based on the work that you did.
Absolutely. So that was great. I mean, we had this great mentor-mentee relationship where I was able to, tap into his innate interest in growing and coaching people, but help give him the managerial courage to make those tough decisions that have to be made.
How long does a typical engagement last for you as an interim person?
3 to 9 months.
Okay.
It depends on what it is that needs to be addressed.
So it's very short term.
Yes.
And then when you're done, what typically happens in terms of the handoff? Who does it get handed off to?
Well, usually there's an incoming CEO or COO, where there's somebody else coming in, and so there's some period of cross training where you're handing it back off to the next person.
So you solve a lot of the problems, do a lot of the heavy lifting, address the issues, and then at some point it gets handed off to a new person to run it.
Well, and in some cases, what you're doing is you're fixing the low-hanging fruit that nobody has had either the guts or the intuition, or for whatever reason, stuff doesn't get solved. So you fix the low-hanging fruit. You start to put something in place where the board can now see, what the right long-term approach should be. And sometimes this helps them decide, do they need a technologist running the company? Do they need a generalist? Do they need someone with sales and marketing? And I sort of fill that role interim to help them do that. And then they pick whoever they want to do that.
So you've been doing this for a while, and you've obviously got tremendous experience. So if you think about what you know today, based on all your experience, now rewind to when you first became an interim CEO, what would you have done differently on your first few engagements?
Oh gosh, so the first mistake I made, I'd basically grown up in operations. And so when I took on my first assignment, I didn't understand the need to really go understand sales and finance. And when the going got tough, I retreated back to the operations side.
Okay.
And so I soon realized that, that's a real core skill of mine that I can do with my left hand. Right. I really need to go dive into the areas that I don't have real deep domain experience on. And so that's the first thing I learned. And then find who the experts are in the business who really know what's going on, and listen to them. So that was, early on, and fortunately that happened early enough that I was able to, have some successes.
Right. So if I'm in a board meeting right now and I own a company that's struggling and I need to bring on an interim exec, and your name comes up, what can they expect when they hire you? What do they get when they hire Bill?
Tremendous integrity. I'm there to drive a solution that's right for the business. And I'm going to make the tough decisions that are needed in order to push this forward, but I'm going to do it with as much empathy as possible for the people in the organization. I often say when I'm talking about culture that we need to reweave a pair of women's trousers into a men's overcoat, but we don't want to tear the fabric. And so if you can imagine sort of the art of making that happen, that's always my goal, and that's my opening discussion both with the staff and with the board. And I said, we're not going to try to tear this because that can kill the company,
right.
But I'm going to attempt to pull that off. If that doesn't work and we have to tear the fabric, we will. But I'd rather go from the, let's take the current culture and get it moving in the direction that it needs to go.
Right, because you respect the people and what they've done, and you can't throw them under the bus.
At the end of the day, 95% of all the answers that are needed for the business are already in the business. They're in the heads of the people in the organization. So you need to bring that out and help people express that and have the confidence to be able to share that. Sometimes give them the voice to the upper management where they've been shut out and haven't been heard.
Awesome. So describe yourself in one word. What one word best characterizes Bill?
Motivated.
Last question. What advice would you give to a board on why they should consider hiring an interim person versus maybe hiring a full-time person and throwing them into the shark-infested ocean?
Well, the advantage of an interim is that you have somebody who can come in with no bias over the existing business, and you know that they're going to work themselves out of a job. The whole idea is that we come in, we focus on the task at hand, knowing that we're going to hand that off to somebody else. So we're not trying to create any sort of long-term, political, tentacles into the organization. It's all about coming in, fixing the issue, and getting it ready to be handed off to somebody else.
Kind of like the special forces, right?
Think of it as a SEAL team or a SWAT team or someone like, that's really, we're coming in with a very specific purpose in mind. Yeah.
Great. So last thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
No.
Pleasure having you.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.